In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the notice requirements have been satisfied. Meeting dates for the year are confirmed at the annual meeting, are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center and published in the record within the first 10 days of the new year. Copies of all revised or additional meeting notices are sent via fax to the Record, Suburbanite, and Northern Valley Press, and are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center. Okay, first, would you read the closed session?
And we're having a modification, we're adding something to it.
Okay.
Resolve in compliance with NJSA 10:12, Mayor and Council going to close executive session, discuss the following matters. Actually, we're removing the personnel matter that was advertised, that was a DPW disciplinary matter, that's being adjourned to another day. We do have an update on contract negotiations, that's a collective bargaining matter, and we're adding discussion concerning the potential purchase of real estate by the borough. That's this one.
I'll move to...
Minutes be taken in the meeting and released to the public until the matter resolved after this closed executive session. Mayor and Council will reconvene in this Richard D. Wilson Committee room to continue and to have the continued public meeting.
Motion to close.
To go in closed session.
Second? All in favor? Aye. All right, Aaron, if you would just shut everything off and... Okay, under to be considered, HPC comments on historic preservation designations recommendations. Does anybody have any comments on that?
So, I actually have read through this, and I would just like to say that I think that the initial argument presented by one of our residents that there's a diminishment in value is a faulty argument. I think that all of the studies attached, and that the HPC has reviewed them as well, have shown just the opposite, that it's either a neutral or an increase in value for both that historically designated property and the surrounding neighborhoods, especially when there's a historic district. They actually show tax increase and benefits to the town and the business.
I think there's a difference between designating a residence historic and designating part of a downtown district historic. Having sat through quite a few of these presentations, it's still not clear in my mind whether designating a home, a residence, is a positive or negative thing. I know individuals will tell you, I think it's positive. There are homeowners that think it's positive. There are homeowners that fight it because they think it's negative. And I'm not convinced, nobody's ever convinced me one way or the other that their argument is correct. However, in a business district, there's other issues involved with a business district. You know, if you want, we designate the most of this block historic, and then we have an opportunity to redevelop the downtown business district or that street, we have a real problem if redevelopment is what you're looking for. So, you know, that's something to take into consideration. You know, beyond whether or not you find these individual buildings have a historic nature or value to them, we also have to take into account what it means to the future of our downtown business district. Max, did you want to say something?
Yeah, the truth is, I looked through the entire correspondence. I read all of them, and I didn't understand what can the council do to do anything if a building is dedicated historic or not. They were talking about changing in taxes. I looked through all the possible, I didn't see any way we can do anything with the taxes, we can do anything there. So these three conversations that come out were original recommendation, the consultant report, and the economic impact on it. I just could not find what is the core. What did they want from the council? Because I don't think we can do anything about it.
What does who want from the council?
Both first the letter that we got from Mr. Maslish, then the answer to that letter. Is there a request to do something?
Well, Jeff? Please.
Yeah, the request is that we add as part of our process, and I do not, and like the HPC, I don't support this, but the request is that as part of the process before designating property, we look at the appraised value and what impact it would have designating it and how that would change the value of the property. To what end, I don't know, and the question comes up fairly. Even as the mayor pointed out, they're not convinced one way or the other, because the literature goes both ways. And if the value goes up of the property, what are they going to do? Give us a benefit to the town?
But my-
And the cost of when do we do this is a problem. What the cost is, who bears the cost of that appraisal. There's so many points in the process, and there's so many variables in terms of the value of the house without being designated.
Well, I'm not going to use the fancy names for the buildings, but I'm going to refer to them as by the tenants. The Wells Fargo building, which is on the corner, I love that building. If somebody said to me, designate that building, I don't want it to change, I could see that. Okay, I really could. I could also see the argument against it if I owned the property. Okay, but you go down to what used to be the apothecary or Cookteek. They're pretty. You know, I sit over at Hyla Park and I look at the streetscape and I think it's a beautiful streetscape. But I can also envision at some point in time some developer coming in and saying, you know what, I could acquire all of the property from the theater on down to the corner, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to build a mixed-use thing, blah, 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 or whatever. And, you know, if those properties are designated historic, they're not gonna change. That's really, you know, and it's good to, you know, if they're designated historic, can we depend on the owners to keep them up? I know the Cookteek building, at least at one point, was falling apart. They wanted to cook in the kitchen, and they needed ventilation, and before, I think, our fire inspector went in there, and the walls were, the roof was in bad shape. So you designate that, now you have an owner that really can't do a heck of a lot with that building. You know, it's really this is, in my mind, one of the toughest decisions, if it was to come before the council, one of the toughest decisions we would have to make, because there is, nobody can tell you definitively it's right or it's wrong. And you have to have a vision for the town, and one of the reasons the HPC, their vision is, we want to keep this town looking, you know, they're not against progress, but we want to save the parts of the town that we think are special. And they think these buildings are special, and like I said, I agree with one building in particular, Wells Fargo. I don't necessarily, they're pretty, but are they worth preserving forever at the cost of you know, affecting future development downtown? You know, do we need an action on this? I mean,
That's what I couldn't understand.
no, I think,
No, what had happened was when this was presented, council requested the HPC to weigh in, but there's no formal actions to be taken.
so I think what we can do, they may want to do it anyway, but what we can do is ask them to come in and make a presentation. It'll be a lengthy presentation because there's more than one property. It could take a couple of hours, and listen to what they have to say. At the end of that presentation, if we're so inclined to consider designation, the next step would be to send it to the planning board for their recommendation. And again, the planning board will look at it exactly the way I was talking about. They're going to look about future of the downtown. Public hearings get involved where the people will come. I'm sure Mrs. Everon, who is president of the chamber, will have a lot of thoughts on it because it impacts our business district.
But this was not generated because of the downtown.
There was nothing directly
This
related
was
to
not,
one.
No,
this
it happens to be generated,
generated because of two particular properties
Right, exactly.
outside the downtown.
properties that the HPC feels are worth preserving.
Which we already declared them.
Historic.
Those are, we declared them already historic, the two buildings. The two houses that they proposed, we agreed
Yeah,
and
but
we
those are
declared.
residences up on Highwood.
Yeah,
That has
exactly.
nothing to do with this.
But no, this
Well,
is,
that's what
this is
generated
what
the letter.
generated
Oh,
the whole
okay.
thing. So what I couldn't
That is
understand.
precisely
Yeah.
why he's concerned about appraisal of a homeowner's house when it's being designated.
Exactly.
And what the question becomes, at what point in that process we would even think to do it and how that would be accurate
We
information.
basically chastised the HPC for not being more proactive when we lost 53 Knickerbocker, because we felt that maybe 53 Knickerbocker should have been designated. And once again, you could have made an argument for or against it. Obviously, the property owner was against it, and as a result, the borough kind of backed down. But the truth of that property was, prior to the mother of the family, the matriarch, passing away, she probably would have supported designation. So we said to the HPC, let's not, you know, let the cows get out before we lock the door. So now, they were very proactive up on Highwood, much to the, disagreement of the property owners, and now they're coming down here. But the final arbiters are the mayor and council, okay? And just like we were up on Highwood, we can make if we want to ask them to move forward, the next step would be for them to come in and make a presentation.
This is not what they ask.
Right.
The whole idea is not that they don't say, we want to present it. They said, should there be a process that where one property, if we consider to declare it historic, should there be a process whereby we somehow possibly compensate the owner for the burden of getting this historic designation?
For an assumed
Well,
diminution
but I
of
think
the
we
value of
asked
the
that,
property.
we
So
asked that
that
same
was the letter
question.
from
Taking.
Masslich.
But we asked that same question up when we were at Highwood, right, Bill? And the answer is that we don't have the authority to do anything with the
That's
the taxes.
exactly what I was saying. There is no concrete actions that we can take, either one way or another, to
Right.
either relieve or add burdens
But-
once we
but
get
what's
it.
it- what's
Other
it-
than approving or disapproving the
Exactly.
designation.
What's interesting is that when a person says to you, well, if I designate my property historic, can you help me out with the taxes? So what they're saying, though, is, in my mind, designation has a negative impact on me, so can you compensate for that negative impact by lowering my taxes?
That was Mr. Masslich said.
But that's also what Mr. Farley and his neighbors said
yeah,
also.
Exactly.
Okay, but here's the thing. The answer actually to that is yes, but it's not us that would do it. If the homeowner whose property is designated can establish through proofs with an appraiser and convince the county tax board commissioners that in fact the value of the property, the market value has decreased, the county tax board will award them a judgment reducing their assessment.
But that's
Which
after
means they
it's
say,
designated, right,
that's
Bill?
after it's designated. You can't say in advance because
Exactly.
it depends upon
And
property.
you're involved in this. Is there any sort of precedent, is there any sort of history in, these appeals
I-
being successful?
I
or
have
not?
never in, not just here, but in 30 years of handling tax appeals, ever had to defend, because I represented other municipalities, an allegation that the property value decreased by reason of a historic preservation, or had a client who took that position and actually won in 30 years.
Even go one step further. Your house is designated. How do you prove that the value, the appraised value has gone down?
No,
How do you prove it?
the market value's gonna, well, it'd be the same way as, let's say, if you had a commercial property that was contaminated with hazardous substance. You have testimony before the tax board or the tax court judge that similar properties that.
I'm not sure we want to compare designation to.
So, Bill,
Well, you're saying, any type of condition
Right.
affecting a property, whether it be a designation, an easement, some kind of restriction, zoning restriction, any type of restriction on a property's use, or the ability to change that property could have an impact upon value, positive or negative. You have to establish that to the satisfaction of the county tax board, if it's within their jurisdiction, or the tax court. And as a consequence, there'd be a judgment changing the assessment appropriately.
so
Jeff,
you're in agreement,
but Jeff, in your experience in New York, I mean, there's a battle all the time ever since Penn Station.
right.
And your experience in New York, you have anything to add?
It's really, cities are different, but what I do want to add is that I think if we stay focused on the letter that Mr. Maslach sent, and we stay focused on Karen Noose's response, which I looked at when she first circulated to the HPC, I think she addresses his issues very fairly, very reasonably. He wants an appraisal done by the borough, not by the homeowner, and she says very clearly that the literature does not demonstrate the values go down, as you said, Mayor, and that there's really no reason to do this, and that it's very complex as to when you would do that, what variables are in there. And therefore, the recommendation of the HPC not to say thank you basically to him for the suggestion, and we've considered it doesn't make sense.
Okay, so Mr. Maslow's letter was addressed to the mayor and council.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm glad that Karen took the initiative to respond. So how do you suggest that we respond to Mr. Maslow's?
I think by adopting the language that she has, maybe cutting, well, actually, I think it's very thorough, so maybe he's better off receiving a thorough response.
So I think that what we should do, if it's, I can say, is that basically say that we have reviewed it, we send it to the HBC, and here is a very thoughtful and thorough response that the council, the mayor and council agrees with, and that really should be pretty much it.
Okay, can we do that? Thank you.
The main question is, can we do a property tax rebate? And we're saying no.
No.
We don't have a process.
His
that
real
can-
thing, before the rebate even is the appraisal that the town pays for.
That's right, the appraisal.
So that if they're going to tax court, that they're not taking the cost burden on of doing the appeal themselves, that we've created this situation, therefore we should pay his
The
the
public
gist
should
of,
pay.
the public should pay, the gist of his argument.
Right. No.
Okay, you know,
But that's
no.
not budgeted, you have to put that in the budget if you're gonna start doing that.
No, we're not doing it.
We're not.
Don't say we are doing it.
No.
We're
Susan.
not.
Oh, I thought you said.
No, he
we're saying
said,
we
explain it, that's
Oh,
why
okay.
we can't do it.
Oh, I
okay,
was gonna-
next is the proposed resolution
Friday.
for Pride Day. Anybody have a problem with that?
Well, maybe we can allow
I'd like-
Lauren to present it.
Well, so I wrote the ordinance, and again, this is a draft, so feel free to change the language. And there is, just want to say, a little discussion, that I asked our borough attorney about the Q, and the Q has a very long definition, so we might change that. But the ordinance is to recognize the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community here in Tenafly, to show our support by having a Tenafly Pride Day as the last Sunday in June. And I would like to have three things as part of this annual day here. One is a display of the pride flags on the borough flagpoles. Two,
Display what, I'm sorry?
the pride flag, the rainbow
yeah,
flag.
Rainbow flag.
The rainbow.
Two, some sort of gathering. It can be very informal. I said, or other similar public green space if we don't want to do it in Hewlett Park, acknowledging, discussing, and celebrating Pride Day and its mission. And three, creating an annual community event for those who would like to participate. And I had some suggested, a green market, a parade, a concert, something in which those who want to come out and support the LGBTQ community can come and show their support in that
How
way.
did this come about? This is you put this on the agenda?
I put this on the agenda in two things. One, I do think that as a welcoming community, that we should also take a stand on the LGBTQ community. There is an increase in hate speech, in discrimination, in hate groups arising across the United States, not only for this community, but for many others. I know as a Jewish person, I'm seeing a ton of anti-Semitism coming up in the news, which is very disheartening. But two, Bergen County itself has a long-standing tradition of doing a Pride Day and supporting the LGBTQ community. Jim Tedesco, our freeholder, our county executive, thank you, has made this his initiative. I was there for a speech in which the LGBT community of Bergen County spoke, and I thought, well, you know, our town should be part of this.
Well, I, without weighing in on this particular resolution, I would suggest, was this ever discussed in For the Good of the Order?
Yes.
Okay. The only problem is, I don't know about you folks, but I get at least one or two a week rather, from the county. I know Greek independence is being celebrated
Yeah.
tomorrow. Just about every country in the world gets celebrated in Hackensack. You know, how many, we're doing a lot more than we ever did. Do we want to, you know, you're going beyond the resolution, you're coming up with a whole bunch of things you'd like to do on June 30th, or whenever
Last
the
Sunday in
date is. Does the council want to get involved in these things?
Okay, so,
Anybody want?
yeah, I think
Yes.
that we have to take a stand. I think that the more we take a stand, the more we show the real color of Tenafly. And if we trying to be quiet and allow the discrimination, the hate speech to continue without taking a stand, is if you are quiet, you tacitly basically approve that. So I think that what...
Jeff, how do you feel?
I tend to agree. Look, I've always been proud of the fact that our high school has a gay student alliance that's active, and, you know, that they should get support from the surrounding community.
Dan, any other thoughts? Lauren?
Why don't you go?
Well, so shall we put this on the,
Wait, Lynn, you have one more council person.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Tony. My suggestion is let's put this on for the next public meeting. Okay, Lauren, I would suggest if you want to kind of take the lead on this, reach out to the Gay Alliance in the high school, because that's your constituency here, and work on some plans with them.
I will say I reached out to, while I was creating the ordinance, I reached out to Bergen County PFLAG, which is parents of lesbian and gay teenagers and youth, because I do think, you know, especially given everything else in our teen communities right now, I thought that was a good way to bridge it. And it turns out that the president was a Tenafly resident.
Well, that's good. I would be very hesitant, you know, as we do a lot of these things that some people might say go beyond our borders. I would try to keep them Tenafly, you know, because before you know it, you're bringing people from the outside that might not have the same agenda or interests as you. And at least if you're working with Tenafly people, you know, they're usually looking to do what's right for Tenafly. So, you know, not necessarily this one, but in the future, if we're going to get involved in some of these things, you know, a good example was the welcoming thing. It's good to have input and support from the people in this town. What we don't really need is people coming from out of town either to support it or in many cases oppose it.
I was researching the effect on our youth today, and I did want to include that in the ordinance. I do think that's a very important part of it, so that's why I did reach out.
And Bill, you reviewed the resolution?
I did. I went through it with Lauren when she first did it. I thought it was good.
Next is the proposed amendment to the smoking ordinance.
This is another one that Lauren drafted, and it's pretty good, although I have one thing to say about it.
So I will introduce this. This is a revision to our current smoking ordinance, section 3-16 of our borough regulations. And the main premise of this is that Tenafly is increasing and has a wonderful outdoor seating and outdoor cafe and restaurant space. Currently, you can stand right outside the perimeter of the restaurant and light up a cigarette, and the person sitting at the table is breathing the smoke. So this was premised on the idea around hospitals, which have a 10-foot barrier around all hospital entrances and sidewalks, to have a non-smoking zone. And again, it does not include, there is an exception for any personal or residential property within that 10 feet. So if you're standing on your own lawn, of course, we can't restrict you. But if you are standing within 10 feet of a outdoor sidewalk cafe or restaurant here in Tenafly, you should back up if you're going to light up your cigarettes or other smoking.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It doesn't say other.
It does in the definition.
Enforcement
Okay.
The definition. The definition, if you
That's
see.
whatever you want it to
Okay.
be.
It says
I mean,
cigarette, electronic smoking device, marijuana, cigar, pipes, or any other combustible tobacco product.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
My question
who's
is the
going to-
enforcement.
who's going to enforce it?
Well, that's always an interesting question.
Because the police don't want to enforce ordinances like this.
Right.
We actually ran into this on some of the other, actually state authorized things like the Home Improvement Contractors Act, which is actually a disorderly persons offense to not have your sticker updated, to not have your ID cards, and the police just won't enforce it. Even though it's actually a disorderly persons offense, they just said, we're not enforcing it. So that's always the problem, and we discussed this, you know, Lauren, you didn't say that, we already discussed this at the last meeting. That'd be 10 feet from the area, right? You have to be at least 10 feet away. So the question is, how do you enforce it? We asked that question.
Right.
Who enforces it? Because by the time someone's smoking, they either could be gone. If you say, oh, I saw that person smoking, they were smoking, you know, right over there, and that's only 6 feet away.
So
it's a problem. I don't know what to say about it. Technically, it would be the police or, because you don't have,
I have three options here.
you don't have a code enforcement person working at night,
No.
right? So how could you say, we're not gonna enforce it at night, or we're gonna enforce it during the day, and when they call the code enforcement guy to come?
Can I,
I just don't know how to enforce it.
Bill, can I
You
say
guys
something?
did want it.
Say something? The patrons of the restaurants and everybody in Tenafly and most of the Bergen County and the surrounding are pretty civilized. They would automatically obey by this type of ordinances, knowing that it's to their benefit. We do not, I don't think that Lauren is looking over here to create a police state or something like that, that would create. So to answer the question, once that type of ordinance is presented and it's somehow made available for people to see, you will see that the self-adherence to that type of regulation is 60, 70, 80, maybe 90%, which is enough to reduce the secondhand smoke by a significant amount without having to have a police enforcement, stuff like that. It's the same thing where you have the, hey, we're not gonna say sell cigarettes to kids. 90% of the people will do that. 10% of the people will make a business out of selling the cigarettes to the kids because that's how they...
Well, but there's a difference. The stores are reluctant to sell cigarettes to an underage person because they know that every once in a while, there's a sting operation not by the local police, but by, tobacco, fire, and arms. They come in and a violation is very serious. Here, I would suggest we add a section that if somebody's smoking in the wrong place, call Max and tell him he's wrong, that 75% of the people aren't listening to it. The people that smoke, get up and smoke from the tables, what are we trying to do? Tell them instead of, they have
Just
to go
move a little
20
bit
feet away?
Yeah, move a little bit, yeah, that's right, that's
Does that
all.
won't offend the people at the table?
How about me at the table having to breathe their smoke is offensive?
Well, I agree with I agree with I don't think anybody would disagree with the intent of the ordinance.
Yeah.
The question becomes, will it accomplish what you're intending? I don't think there's any, and once again, the bill is correct. You're not gonna get the police you call up the police department and say, hey, somebody's smoking next to my table, can you come? They're not gonna come.
Yeah, and that's not even the intent.
I know, but,
Yeah.
what I was gonna say, I didn't disagree with what this says in terms,
Okay, good.
because I know the police aren't going to come out
Of course.
to enforce that. But the police are the only officials that are on duty in town 24 hours.
Yeah.
So, we know they're not going to come out to offense, but at least they're the only ones you could logically designate for enforcement purposes.
Well, do you think it makes sense to include, basically, the paragraph that says enforcement and fees, the first paragraph, we really should put in our ordinance, call the police when we know the police aren't gonna respond?
Well, the police, what the chief's going to say is that our job is to enforce, to
Major violations.
crimes and
Yeah,
law
major
enforcement.
violations.
And this is a local regulation.
I mean, what
that,
Max
we
just
don't
said
enforce
is,
it.
let's say that what Max said is accurate, that the fact that we have this ordinance, a majority of the people will obey it.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I'm not sure why, first of all, I don't think we should put something in an ordinance that says call the police unless we discuss it with the police chief.
Yeah.
All right?
Well,
And I know what the
he's
police chief is gonna say.
He's gonna say.
If we get around to it, no officer is gonna say, I'm not enforcing the laws that are
Yeah.
in place. But why would we put him in that position?
So Peter, this is the same thing like saying you cannot smoke in public places in a restaurant. What we're saying, okay, it's not just the restaurant, just give me a few more steps so I don't get it when I'm in this
So
restaurant.
I would
So
say,
it's
that's
just
fine.
it's a,
Let's eliminate the part that call the police.
Okay,
It's a
I
law.
don't-
just say you're not allowed to, and there's a fine.
That's it, you're not
Fine
allowed
for
to,
it.
leave the fine part in.
yeah, I agree with that.
And also,
How do you enforce the fine though? So now we're,
well, if we have an ordinance, and somebody should get a summons somehow,
How do you report?
Who's gonna give it to him?
please, that goes to the court like any other summons.
Someone has to
Who's
give it to him,
issuing-
though.
Who's issuing the summons, is what I'm saying? Who's showing up to see
Well,
whether that person's
the
smoking?
people that enforce our laws are the police department, our code enforcement people. I don't know that our the health inspector, she can write summonses.
She writes
She does it all the time,
So I put the public officer
No, I'm
was our
saying,
code.
but you asked who would enforce it or who would issue the summonses, but I don't think we need to put that in. I think, I think the intent of the rule is to establish what we want, and like Max says, you know, when New York said no smoking in restaurants, everybody goes, oh,
Yeah.
and nobody's ever gonna, well, today,
Exactly.
it works. And I don't know how many, if anybody, ever gets a ticket, a summons for smoking in a restaurant. You're more likely to have the owner of the restaurant come over and say, please,
Exactly.
you're in violation. And I think the only people that will enforce it in a restaurant are the owners. However, you can't expect an owner to get 10 feet off his property to enforce it.
So I
Right, if you're on a sidewalk on public property, all right, and you're smoking, and the people who are sitting down eating 5 feet away say to the restaurant owner, saying,
Sure.
you know what, this is really bothering us. You got 5 people over here smoking, and the smoke's blowing right in our face. He can't do anything about them being on the sidewalk.
Keep in mind
Yes.
that we have at least a dozen places
Yeah.
that have outdoor seating.
Yeah.
90% of them are on a sidewalk. It would be physically impossible for somebody walking down that sidewalk smoking a cigarette to move 10 feet out without going into the street. So, I mean, keep in mind what we're doing. I think, I know what your intent is, because there's one place in particular where it's an issue. And, you know,
But I will say that when we're talking about enforcement, I find that some of the biggest offenders, and this isn't to categorize, but happens to be those who work sometimes at the restaurant, the wait staff or the people who are on break, especially in the center of our town. I find that they just stand within that 10-feet perimeter, and I do find it an issue. So I don't necessarily want to only rely on the restaurant owners to enforce this, which is why I have the enforcement provision. And I don't actually think it doesn't have teeth, because if you have a situation where someone is, I've actually had the situation where I say, excuse me, I'm with my children, we're having ice cream, we're sitting outside, would you mind putting out your cigarette? Or just walking away. He says, no, I'm here, I have the right to smoke right here. And technically, he did. And he was right next to my table, but not within the cafe seating. And so, you know, he was one of your 10% max. But I do think that if I was able to say, okay, that's fine, I'm gonna just call over to, you know, our borough or a police officer, maybe he would have taken 5 steps back. I do think that this kind of enforcement, while it might seem that the police might not show up, every now and then if they do, just like every now and then if the ATF shows up,
every one
it
of
is
our
enough.
ordinances, 99% of our ordinances are meant to be enforced by the police.
okay,
We don't have in any of them,
So
if you
that-
see a violation, call the cops.
okay,
So I would
Yeah.
suggest taking it out,
that's fine.
you know, and I think maybe when this ordinance is law, we send a copy out to everybody that has
Yeah.
outdoor seating, just so the owners are aware of it. We're not, and you know, if an owner was to question it, I would say, we're not expecting you to enforce something off your property, but on the other hand, you know, one of the biggest violators we could say are your employees. Just tell them to move away
Yeah.
when they smoke.
I think that's very reasonable.
Okay.
I think it's very reasonable. We
Next
always
is the-
can come up to a
next is the
compromise.
Propose-
Oh, so anyway,
question is,
there's
Laura,
another,
at
but
what
there's
point
another
do you-
issue. Wait, go back to the
Okay,
smoking one.
okay.
Because I have another issue about changing it. On, Lauren, in section 1,
Okay, go ahead.
your secondhand smoke definition,
Okay.
I would take out the part that says which contains approximately
Okay, I'm fine
7,000
with that.
chemicals. I'd strike that, I'd just leave it
That was
and
with
put a
the
period after
cigarette.
smoking.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Just because
I agree.
by doing that, someone could say, wait a minute, now, it doesn't, my smoke didn't have 7,000
Right, or
chemicals in it.
vaping, or,
Right.
that's fine. I'm fine with that.
So I would strike it from there.
Okay, because the vaping has less than
Yeah.
70 elements of
Right,
cancer-causing carcinogens.
Lauren, I wish you'd slow down, or in 3 years, you're gonna run out of new ordinances.
I got a whole list.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that. All right, next is the proposed vacancy registration
Okay,
ordinance.
Oh, this is a good one.
That's something that we need to discuss.
Discussing it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Lauren,
so-
can you please take us, because
Okay,
through the process that you have laid out?
okay, so there's,
She's
I
doing
just
all
want
this
to say,
work for you.
so there's two ordinances.
I rewrote it.
There's two versions of this. There's mine, which is a definite draft, and you'll see there's some highlights, and Bill very carefully has rewritten a lot of it. But this was my take. This actually stemmed from a discussion Tony had brought up in a previous committee of the whole. I agree with him wholeheartedly. And it is the idea that our current landlords are not taking responsibility to revitalize or rehabilitate or even maintain the safety and health of our vacant stores. So my ordinance is actually written just for commercial and industrial. Bill actually has now included residential in his. But the process that I would like to see happen in town is that if a storefront or a property itself becomes vacant, and I've included, joint use, combined use with residential and commercial, so that 75 or majority of it has to be vacant to fall into this ordinance. They have to, within 30 days, register the vacancy with the borough, so that the borough is aware. And that is for safety reasons, health reasons, making sure it's safe. They have to immediately lock the doors, and they have to show proof of insurance. And I think the insurance is important because it takes financial burden off of the borough now if there's an emergency, God forbid, a fire or something, that now they have insurance. The second thing is that they have to provide access to the vacant property, so that if our health inspectors or our code officials need to go, there needs to be a designated agent here for the vacancy, so that anyone within 24/7 can get called to say, there's a water main pipe broken, and here's the person we need to speak to. The third, and Bill and I semi in disagreement on this, is a vacancy property plan, which says, my intent for this property going forward is X. I will fill it with a new resident, I will renovate it, I'll rehabilitate it, I'll knock it down, demolish, whatever it is. But to let the borough or the planning board know what's coming. And the final thing is registration fees. So the first initial fee, we can choose our numbers. I researched all of the different property vacancy registrations in New Jersey. I've gone through numerous ones. Ours is actually on the lower side. Cherry Hill is like 3 times as much. But our initial fee, it could be anything you want, but I put $300 per vacancy. So if you have 6 stores, it's not just the owner, it's each vacancy. So that's 6 times $300. Biannual inspections, so at 6 months it goes up a little bit, and so forth. If you're vacant for 3 years or more, paid every 6 months, $1,500. You can apply for a waiver, a one-time waiver, if you're in the middle of construction, if you know there's a tenant coming, whatever it is, you can apply here to the borough for a one-time waiver. The other thing I have is if our health inspector shows up and it's found to be unsafe, not secure, failure to maintain pristine working condition of property, it looks like, no one will ever want to come back as a tenant in that vacant property, then there's additional fees. So if the health inspector shows up at any point in time in the annual or biannual inspections, then all of a sudden now we have fees that attach if you haven't been maintaining your property. And in these property vacancy ordinances, what's very important is that the fees you impose have a reasonable and rational relationship to the costs that the borough has to incur. So how much does it cost for a health inspector to come out to do the administrative paperwork, to have somebody here, keeping track of the vacancies and so forth. So that's my idea of it. Bill has actually included foreclosures on residentials, vacancies. At the moment, I'm happy to go either way. I just want to make sure, though, that especially for our business and our downtown, that we have a track of what's vacant and what's happening with it.
All right, let me go through a couple
Go through
things.
yours.
One, I think that there are a lot of good things in Lauren's draft, but I think there are a lot of things that aren't really applicable to a municipality like Tenafly. First, let me say, yes, although we'll include industrial, we don't really have a problem with industrial buildings here being abandoned and.
Well, we don't have very many industrial
Right.
buildings, that's the reality.
So-
Yes.
There are some, but
Down
we
by
don't,
Benjamin
there really has never been a problem with abandoned industrial buildings, and, but I don't disagree that we can at least have them in there. But a lot of the things that you have here, which came from, I think you said Jersey City was a was a
Cherry Hill,
source.
Cherry Hill was.
All right, well, whatever municipality this came from, they obviously have some issues with abandoned industrial buildings, which we really don't expect we'll ever have a problem with. But I'll keep them in anyway. But you shouldn't really leave out, it's always been my position that any vacant or abandoned property ordinance that we pass should include residentials, because we have had issues with residential properties that were bank-owned, or just people walked away from them and they weren't even owned, they were still owned by the people, but the banks were paying the taxes, that just turned into eyesores. Swimming pools that were cesspools, broken windows, unsecured property, which, yes, violate our property maintenance ordinance, but we need to have an idea. We need to have properties registered, and so let's include the residentials also. Let's be nicer in terms of the fees for the residences.
Is that included?
It's not in Lawrence.
So the one that we have over here, Lauren, says single-family and two-family residential property.
No, it's only
No,
if it's right, but it's only if there are residential units above a commercial unit, that's covered by
I
Lawrence.
see.
But that's only because those might be occupied, and to make it so it's not an exemption for that.
Bill has a draft of his, we didn't get it.
Yeah, it was. I thought you linked it, but you didn't, right?
I replaced Lauren with yours since you had edited.
Oh, really? Oh,
Okay, well,
mine's still
Bill,
on.
in your version,
Mine's still-
where is the insurance?
No. Actually, there's no insurance provision. I want to address that right now.
Oh.
Folks,
I don't. Although it's common to
Hey,
see.
hold on.
Although it's common to see, and I've seen it in probably 50% of the ones I look at, a provision requiring proof of insurance. I can include that. It's not in my draft, and I thought about it because it is in Lawrence, and I thought about including it, and I'm a little bit still on the fence because it imposes another level of review and administrative work here. To check the insurance certificates, and at what benefit? Lauren, you said that it protects the town if there's a fire or something. It doesn't really, because the insurance company doesn't send emergency vehicles out when there's a fire. They always get involved afterwards, long afterwards, usually longer than the property owner wants, to assess the damage.
What about liability?
It is liability insurance, if something happens, we're not responsible for private property. So to the extent that there's a...
No, that's not.
They're uninsured if they don't have vacancy insurance, is what I was told.
Well, I'm saying that the municipality's not liable for injuries that occur on private property or as a result of a defect on private property. We're not responsible for that. So we're not really insured on their insurance. It's really the owner who has the problem. Do we have some marginal benefit from there being insurance? I think we do, because at least we know then there's some coverage for replacement. We don't have an eyesore sitting there, that there's some likelihood that there's going to be a repair. So,
if there is an accident, something falls for a vacant building on the sidewalk, and then basically that person sues both the town unless there is a insurance on the vacant building, we're gonna pass. So there is a reason for insurance.
Well, that's not actually correct, but I'll give you a buy on that.
Thank you.
I'm not going to go into explaining
I will
Title
say,
59, but
I do think that insurance also is another obligation to get the landlord involved, to get them interacting with our town, to get us interacting with the landlord, and use that as a vehicle to say, and what are you doing with your building, and how are you feeling?
You didn't convince me, but I already convinced myself to put it in when I was talking, because I think that there's a
After you
different
make the
reason. The reason is because you create another set of eyes. The insurance company has an interest in making sure that the building is not an excess hazard. So basically what you're doing is you're partnering with the insurance company by requiring that there be coverage. So because the insurance company's going to say, I'm not, you have to have insurance, and I'm not insuring it unless you do such and such. And we can think of our own houses, when you have a tree that's tilting over like this, and they come and they do a random inspection, they say, you know what, you gotta remove that tree, because otherwise we're not going to cancel your insurance.
Here's what I'd like to do,
So,
because I don't want,
I'll add that.
at this point, I really don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time on this, because it's nowhere near complete. Lauren, have you had a real good chance to look at what Bill did?
Not
Probably
as
not,
much.
yeah.
Okay,
I-
so-
Continue.
so I'd like you to do is review what Bill did, because we basically have two versions, and they're a little bit different. Review what Bill did, come to a combined draft, so that
It'll be Bill's draft.
we can bring it back to the council to look at again. Then the next step is, it's got to go out to the building department, to the health department, because you're including them in here, okay? And for their comments and their thoughts on it. Then when we get their opinions, we can come back here, discuss moving it along and introducing it. But I think the first step is, there's got to be a meeting of the minds
Yeah.
between you and Bill.
Well, I'm going to defer to Bill on, the concept is there, and Bill is.
All right, well, I think
interested.
I'd like to see Bill add something about the insurance. Other than that, I think it's pretty
So there was
decent.
another.
But there's another fundamental thing, which is the requirement of a plan, that plan.
Okay, so
I don't know why we would want that. It seems like you're involving you're too much
Well-
administration at our level.
As a
for things.
property owner, if my building is vacant, and
You
I'm
always want
a
it,
reasonable property owner, unlike some that we have downtown, my plan is to fill the building.
Right.
Now, I could tell you I want to put a gym in there, but if an ice cream store comes in and offers me rent, and when you suggest that they have to file a plan with us, you're also suggesting that we're going to critique the plan, and I don't think we have the right to do that.
So towns have done this, they've put into place, and it's not as specific as that, Mayor. The plan isn't, I want an ice cream truck, or I want an ice cream store versus a gym. The plan is, am I going to seek to keep the building standing as is and fill it? Am I going to demolish or rehabilitate it? Those kinds of big, larger planning that would go before the Planning and Zoning Board. For example, we have a building downtown, 4 or 5 vacancies at this point, 2 holdouts, and I hear through the grapevine, he's gonna demolish the building and redo it. The planning board hasn't heard this, nobody's heard, it's all rumor,
We don't believe everything you hear.
of course.
Yeah.
But this will at least let us know if the building is going to get rehabilitated or demolished, we need to be aware of
Well,
that.
What could you do?
We will be. They can't demolish
come
it
to
without
the-
our permission.
Right, to the
They-
building department.
And they can't do, they basically,
So towns have done this.
basically, the
Towns
only
have
thing
Yeah.
they could do with that, in that building without our permission, and they can't really, because if it's a change of use, even if it goes from a gym to an ice cream store, they would have to get a permit. If they
Okay.
want to demolish, they have to get a permit.
But before
I mean, I'm not exactly sure,
We don't want to care.
if we had any luck in contacting that property owner, which is questionable, what you would expect him to say? Are you going to say, well, I want to fill the stores? Or, how can he tell you that he wants to demolish it when he's got tenants? So, I mean, the reason you're hearing so many rumors about it is because there's no information coming, and I don't think, I'm not sure that we can require somebody to tell us what you're gonna do with the building.
I could think you require it, but
Other
You're not
you
gonna-
can't hold them to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Other towns have that requirement in it, and again, I'm trying to get as much context as I can with those that own business here in our
Well,
town.
I think
That's much more of a business than a
establishing-
I
residential.
think the biannual registration statement is
Is more
enough
than
to
enough.
like annoy them and make them pay.
that registration fee, which escalates,
Right.
and the requirement that we have contact information, which, by the way, they'll give you a phone number and a name, but do you think you're gonna get them 24/7?
No.
But at least we make the attempt. I think, but also, if you, here's a guy that's probably paying $20,000 or $30,000 in property tax, so I'm not sure a $75 fee is gonna make him get off, move a little bit.
No, but
You can't sell the
$2,000 every 6 months is a lot when it's
Well,
been
I-
vacant
I
for a while.
applaud that.
Mine was more than yours, because
Yeah,
mine
I
was
think
2,000
that-
biannual.
If we
Dan
go,
wanted it more.
Biannual.
I think that
Yeah, go ahead.
going through the building department and
It's not
the Board of
reasonable.
Health, it's very good.
It's not reasonably
And we should
related.
also validate with them the amounts, because it is my opinion that the first initial registration should not be high. Something, okay, I just got, my tenant just left me, I'm not gonna punish me because of that. Then the subsequent registration can escalate because, well, now do something to get a tenant, don't hold us up. So those things should be,
Let me ask you a question, Max.
yeah.
Why at
Let's say
75 bucks?
I want to separate commercial from residential.
Right, yeah.
You're residential. Let's say the market falls out of residential, you can't get a tenant.
Yeah.
How are you going to feel about this escalate, some houses are very difficult to sell,
Yes.
okay? So, let's say a guy has to move out of town, the
Yeah.
house is vacant, and he can't sell it.
Yeah,
I think the fee schedule for homes should be a little different from commercial properties in the business district.
agreed. That's exactly what I was saying, that's why we should talk.
Except your house.
Well, Bill
My
has-
house should be,
Bill set it up that way.
I set it up where
Bill set it up that way.
it's,
two different.
you know,
You set it up that
the
way.
residential, the initial registration, we should know when a house is
Yeah,
vacant. So
absolutely.
it's,
Or foreclosed.
it's 75 bucks, and that takes you through the whole calendar year.
Yeah.
All right? The next year, it starts, with your biannual, but it's only 100 bucks every 6 months.
when you pay 20,000 in taxes,
Yeah.
that might
200
not be a
bucks for a
lot for a
year,
house.
and
Yeah,
75
exactly.
bucks for a
Yeah.
year, and then
No, we in
100 bucks
agreement
every
on
6
that.
months is not a lot.
So I will say, in the commercial side, we have to be very careful, because I have seen lawsuits that do say that the fees imposed on vacancies are not reasonably related.
right.
So we, like I said, have to be very aware that, imposing larger fees later on have to be reasonably related to what we're doing with it, are we sending inspectors and our borough officials, how much does that cost, and so forth. It can't be seen as a harsh or cruel penalty for vacancy.
Exactly.
All right, so
So it has to be.
I'd like to move on and just suggest that Lauren and Bill come up with a draft that takes the best parts of both drafts and eliminates the stuff that's no good.
Good.
But the smoking
Fine, take it.
one, is that being introduced at the next meeting?
Which?
The smoking one, since we're just removing that one paragraph.
Yeah.
I think,
Yes,
yeah,
I
sure.
think it's ready.
No, we can take out the police.
Yeah.
part,
Yes.
That
and-
paragraph.
But also
and
the
then
last line of
definition.
that, right,
Now,
the 2 lines, right.
Before we suggest introducing it at the next meeting, do you think we should run it by the Board of Health?
Can't imagine they'd say
I don't
no.
think I have a
They're
problem.
not gonna say no, but they may say, why weren't we? I'm starting, to
Why
get
weren't
sense
we?
that these committees want to be at least acknowledged. And for example, when we did the senior bus, my transportation committee said to me, why weren't we involved in this? And I never thought of it. And, I could give you reasons why they weren't involved in it, but I think it was a
There
valid
is no
point.
problem, I think.
Sure.
Right.
Okay, so I'll prepare the revision and send it to the Board of Health for comment.
and as soon as
then
you
once
get
we
it-
hear back, we introduce.
Yeah, and tell them that we,
Some of them want to reduce
Well,
it.
it would be a matter of, Max, when they meet next, because they don't meet every month.
Yeah.
We will get it back soon enough.
Well, Mayor, I'd really like to get it up.
By the summer.
By the summer,
Oh, it'll be-
especially as the sidewalk
It will
cafes
be-
are.
it'll-
Winter's fine. Winter's fine.
In the meantime,
Find you every time.
Lauren, in the meantime, be careful where you sit.
Well, I've had that
No, I know.
numerous times.
next to a kitchen, next to a
Okay.
kitchen, 'cause that's fine.
That's where they stick me with the kids, come
Next is
on.
my favorite part of the meeting, the administrator's report.
Oh, administrator's report, I only have one item.
That's why it's my favorite.
And that is that the Oresco Park renovation is moving along. The consultant incorporated the comments the council had, and we have the lighting, we have the flag, the extra pathway, we're going to break it down into alternates as part of the bid, so that way we have more flexibility in what we want to determine based on available funding. So currently, specs are being drafted, they should be ready for review by the committee again in the next few weeks. And it's anticipated that we could solicit bids in May, award in June, and have the contract done in the summer, so that way it could be celebrated for this Veterans Day.
For when?
This
Veterans
Veterans Day.
Day.
I know
This
they-
Veterans
That would be
That was
wonderful.
there.
So that's the intent. Hopefully there are no hiccups along the way or issues with bids.
Okay, thank you.
Can I have a comment, please?
That's right.
When we go through these reports, which are very, very helpful, it shows all the approval for the permits and also the Board of Adjustment. We don't ever have here anything that's going on with the planning board. can you add also the report on the planning board actions on this one, next to the Board of Adjustment?
Actions on what next?
In the report over here,
What report are
The
you
building
referring to?
department
the,
report.
Yeah.
in the building department report, it shows basically all the approvals, all the actions of the Board of Adjustment, with all the approval and all the denial, and I think it would be very good for us.
Those aren't the those aren't the Board of Adjustment decisions. Those are the decisions of the building, the zoning officer. In other words, what page you're looking at?
I'm looking in a second.
I'll go to this,
I'm looking at it.
Is it in page
7,
14?
8, yeah,
Or-
7, 8.
Well, it starts with 3 to 14.
what's it start with?
3, it starts there.
Yes.
It says zoning applications.
Manpower.
Not zoning permits.
Zoning applications.
Okay.
Okay, if it's possible, we'd like to
Well,
see
no,
also.
no, I think what you're zoning applications, this is not the zoning board.
Yeah.
These are applications that are filled out in the building department. And
Okay.
they are approved when they don't need a variance.
Right.
When they need a variance, they're denied because he doesn't have the authority to approve a permit that needs a variance. At that particular point, it goes before either the planning board or the Board of Adjustment.
Yeah,
Now, the Board of Adjustment, Lauren has been very fastidious in reporting all of the decisions that the Board of Adjustment has made. This is not the Board of Adjustment.
Can we have in the report also of the Board of Adjustment and the planning board actions?
Well, Jeff is the council seat, and I'm also serving on the planning board.
Yeah.
We can do exactly what Lauren does. And during committee reports, we can report exactly what the planning board has done. And to be honest with you, we have, the zoning board gets a lot more applications than we do.
So I think that,
Okay.
personally, I'll be interested in, if you can do that.
Jeff, you and I will be responsible for that.
And
Right,
if we
well,
can
I-
do it-
the last report,
And you
I
did.
basically did report that this was the application, they didn't do anything with it.
Right.
and-
Okay, so good.
I have a question though. Does the planning board, just as the zoning board gets, they know what's coming up in the schedule, does the planning board get a schedule? Because there are things that maybe our residents want to hear about in this public forum that are coming up that they'd like to weigh in on. And I do think that the residents are behind the ball in that. And
Well, both the Board of Adjustment and the planning board have agendas. Those agendas show what's coming up, not necessarily in depth, and those are put on the website.
Okay.
So if you go to the planning board website, actually go to the main page, the homepage, and click on agendas, right?
Yeah.
So
No,
is there,
Yes, you click on agendas, and people have come that aren't within 200-foot north, say, oh, I see this is up, and they go straight to see Lindsay or Valerie, and they can look at the plans and the application.
And the interesting part of it is, when there's a application of interest, people know about it. Neighbors, et cetera, and they come in, they'll see Valerie if it's a planning board, they'll see Lindsay if it's a Board of Adjustment, and they'll go through the paperwork.
Yeah, it's the requirement that any owner within X number of feet of a property that's applying for either has to be notified by certified letter.
what
But
about the
there are-
town properties? What about the development of the downtown and things like that?
I would imagine any property. I know,
Those are posted.
well, if it's going before those boards.
Just would be very good if we know.
Because I know that when we had zoning board applications regarding commercial properties downtown, everybody within that same number of feet had to be notified. And I believe, I don't know.
All the
is it-
businesses around.
Is it the same for the planning board when
Yeah, 200 feet.
200 feet? So it's the same, that's how you generate the interest.
Yeah,
That
People
and
getting
that and we
letters
tell
saying-
the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and she gets it all over town.
Yeah,
didn't
it would
know
be good
about
things
one.
that are
Nobody
of general
Tell you,
interest.
deliberately.
I would be, which if I'm not in the 200 feet, I would like to know if it's possible.
If
Okay.
there's nothing generated, like the zoning has this generated each month, there's nothing generated on planning that's similar?
Well, this is
Well,
all.
once again, that zoning is not the,
No,
that's
this is
not
the
the,
building department. It's really a misnomer.
it's not the
Sorry.
zone.
This is the building department, which includes both.
Okay,
So it's not specific to Board of Adjustment. This would include things that are,
that planning.
planning would be.
Well, actually,
Okay, good.
everything that comes before the Board of Adjustment or the Planning Board, first was on that list, and there was a denial. And anytime there's a denial, then the big decision, which Lindsay and Donna are very good at, is which board does it go before, depending on what kind of variance they need.
Okay.
Under correspondence, we did get the letter from the county, and we did do a resolution, did we not?
Yes.
Which we have sent out, or we're gonna send out, right?
We will send that. It's
right
on
now.
tonight's consent
It's on
agenda.
to be considered tonight.
I think it was last year.
We did it last year and it's happening.
The second piece of correspondence, I had somebody speak to me verbally, and I asked them to send a memo to us. An employee of the DPW was killed while working 40 years ago. His name was DeWitt, actually known by Dutch, Conklin. And there's a plaque in the old building dedicated to him, and they would like to name the driveway in his honor, the driveway from the street into the new yard. I would hope that the council has no issue with that.
No
No.
issue. No issue.
And we'll do a little ceremony, and
Nice
hopefully everybody will be notified.
Does he
You
still
gonna
have-
bring the champagne?
Oh, no, we should not, no, we can't drink on the job.
Definitely can't smoke.
I'll bring the
It's just-
cigarettes and the cigars.
Does Mr. Conklin's family still live here in Tenafly and his
Yes.
relatives? Okay.
Okay, well,
That would be nice.
I will suggest to them that when we're ready, we do a little ceremony, invite the family.
Okay.
And that shouldn't be too long. I think the next step is to demolish the old DPW building. We'll have a permit, don't worry. And then that will create more parking and, once again, ingress and egress off of Grove Street. Any question about the resolutions?
The consent agenda?
Well, the resolutions turn into the consent agenda, yes.
Okay, yes.
Go ahead.
I'd like to discuss the municipal field synthetic turf. In the resolution over here, I read it over here, and it doesn't say anything about Susan certifying that the funds are available.
No, it says Susan has advised that funding is available for this
I'm
project.
sorry, I missed it?
It's in the whereas on the first
Whereas,
page of
okay,
it.
then I don't have any other questions.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Next is, for the good of the order, I put this down.
Oh, we have to introduce Jason.
Oh, yeah, well, on the consent agenda tonight is our appointment of our bond counsel.
Yes, bond counsel.
Jason is here, eagerly awaiting the part of the meeting where he gets appointed so he can go home.
No, Jason, don't worry, it's gonna be very hot.
Jason has been,
I'm enjoying it.
Jason,
Patiently waiting.
you've been involved with the Tenafly account for how long?
Yeah, 2012.
Okay, so he's
Right.
been, we haven't had any problems with bond counsel in the last 6 years, so he can take credit for that. He was working at a firm that dissolved, or, right, more or less?
Got absorbed, basically.
Was
right?
absorbed.
That was.
Yeah, we merged into another firm, and I've since moved to another.
Is it yours or is it the firm?
No, I'm a partner at a law firm named Winnie, Bantha, Bisraelian, and Kahn now, out of Hackensack.
We need one to this
We
week.
had to-
Okay.
Okay, thank you and welcome, and it's our privilege to be able to work with you.
So
Thank
a
you, Mayor, I
question for
appreciate
you.
Yes.
We always have this discussion going on, and what we're looking is for a solution.
Okay.
As a bond counselor, we're trying to split a very large expense over multiple years. And everybody said that it's impossible, but I said, you're gonna be able to fix it. How can we do that?
He
And
just does
still
the
keep our-
bond. He
and
just
still-
does the bonds. He
Jason,
does-
Jason.
Well,
Well,
we
actually-
can still keep
You
our
can
ratings.
answer this.
If you
Yeah,
want to get
let-
out of here at a reasonable hour, I would temper my
Let him
remarks.
answer this.
So,
And
so
still keep
as,
our rating and still keep our bond rating.
so please, okay, Jason.
Well, actually, I will get to that, but for the benefit of the new members of the council, let me just give you a 1-minute summary of what bond counsel is. I read something today that was just, I thought was interesting.
So you know what you are.
So I know what I am, and you know specifically what my role is.
Yeah.
So over 100 years ago, municipalities would finance their projects by issuing bonds and debt, bonds and notes. The market, the investors would purchase it, and a lot of towns were defaulting on those obligations. This was before the creation of the IRS and the Securities Exchange Commission. So when they went to the courts were towns were successful in saying that they had no authority to issue these things. So bond counsel, the role evolved, and actually underwriters were engaging them to issue a legal opinion to tell the market that these things were properly authorized. As things became more complex, towns started engaging the bond counsel, because what I do is now advise you on the adoption of the bond ordinances and everything that's necessary to get to the point that you can sell your bonds, and allow me to, without a question, issue a clean legal opinion. So that's the evolution of our role. And I'm kind of an intermediary between you and the market in making that happen. So the hardest part, I think, of our job is counseling you guys when you authorize new projects. So a bond ordinance does a couple things. That's one, it authorizes the project, it makes the appropriation for that project, and it authorizes the debt to be issued for that project. So what I need to do is try and distill the information as given to me and just fit it into that and explaining it. So if you, at the time when you say you need a bond ordinance, you can't show me that you have a real project that's ready to be financed, that's now my role. I have to try and put the brakes on it and tell you, well, no, we need some more information. We're not quite ready for this yet. So that's my understanding of the issue you described.
So
maybe to just that it's a premature project.
So if I want to buy an ambulance, it costs $1 million, I want to spend $500,000 on 500, is there a way that you can do that?
To spend 500, so
To basically
You're not spending
finance,
Put
What
aside.
Put
he's
aside.
suggesting is putting it aside.
Yeah, $500,000, $500,000. Can we do that in a way?
So I think what you would do is, if you're not ready right now to fully purchase this ambulance, you would provide for whatever monies you have available now in a reserve.
In a bond?
No, in operating.
In your operating, or
We don't want to do
in your
operating. We don't want to do operating, we want to do
What he's
capital.
trying to say, I'm going to speed it up because otherwise I may change my mind on hiring you, is that you can't put it in a bond. You have to put it in operating.
I was trying to find him.
He's been told that by 12 different people. He's hoping the 13th will tell him something
I'm not
different.
going to miss the opportunity.
You can't in a bond ordinance authorize half of the ambulance.
Okay,
basically.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Does that work?
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
for your time.
Okay.
Too bad.
Thank you for sitting in.
Good night.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me and for.
I think you're safe.
Have a good night.
Under for the
Thank you.
good,
Take care.
under for the good of the order. I don't know about you folks, but I've been getting, and I didn't send them out yet because I want to have this initial discussion with you, from various segments of the legal marijuana industry.
I get it like every day.
They would like to come and advise us and give us some guidance on how we can set it up in Tenafly. So the first, the one and only question I have tonight is, some municipalities are already working on, setting up a zone where marijuana can be sold, and precluding it from being sold somewhere else. It would be like if we zoned for massage parlors and said, it can only be on, and set up a zone for that.
Yeah.
Look at
I mean, do we at this particular point want to do anything in regards to the potential legalization of marijuana?
I am all for medicinal. I think in cancer patients, it's an invaluable thing to bring back appetite. I would be interested to hear from a medicinal side. Other than that, I'm waiting for the state to weigh in on it.
Dan?
You can bring this to CAP and the school board's okay committee. The school
Well,
board's-
I'm confident that CAP is not going to support anything to do with
You
marijuana.
never know.
And, this is one of those things where it's going to be a state law. And whether we allow people to sell it in Tenafly or not is not going to preclude our residents who are legally allowed to buy it from going to the next town or the town after that to purchase it. The question becomes, if you allow it to be sold in our town, not only is it easier for our residents, but you might get other people from other towns where it's banned. So I don't think we need to take any action, because in my mind, it's starting to become questionable as to whether recreational marijuana will be allowed in New Jersey. I know originally the new governor's intent was to move forward with it, but I think he's meeting with some resistance that, you know, I don't know where it's gonna end up. Certainly, if doctors think it's a good idea medicinally, I would not be worried about it, but that, I'm not an expert. Jeff?
Okay.
Did you have your hand up, Jeff?
No.
No,
Well,
Max?
I would say that there is no harm in listening to anybody. So let's listen what they have. We don't have to make a
Well,
decision. We don't have to.
most of the people that are communicating with us are proponents.
We know that.
You wanna invite someone in?
I mean, you brought it up.
Yeah, I'm asking you, do you?
Yeah, I want to hear their point.
Tenafly Bank.
For sure, I'm not going to vote for loosening any rules till we
All right,
understand what.
So then what I will do, for a future work session, I'll put something on the agenda from somebody, and then you guys can decide if you want to have them come in and talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you know, we can, it would be good, Peter, if we open this conversation to hear from more than one person from one point of view. If we open it up, the people that contacted you, like people that contacted me, contacted Laura, are people that said we want to sell.
They're
and-
proponents.
Proponents. Would be good to hear also from the people that say, okay, this is why it's wrong. This is what happened in the state of Washington, Colorado, and stuff like that.
So what we can do is,
And so we have yeah.
one of the people
Okay.
I would suggest inviting, after you hear from a proponent, and not at the same meeting, is maybe inviting the head of CAP, Chemical Awareness, or asking him to recommend somebody to, you know, to give the other side.
But you said,
think we have time.
why not at the same time? Let them one speak, and then we say thank you.
That's a debate.
Well,
You don't want-
I'd rather take facts than debate.
Yeah, and I also
All right,
like short
good.
meetings.
Let's go to,
But
you could mind that.
One second.
Have you been contacted about growing, not just selling? 'Cause I've been
I
contacted
don't
about.
know, as a rule, I don't even read them, to be
I'm saying
honest
the
with you.
farmland and they're trying to do.
Well, we don't have any farmlands, but under
Green
the potential law, state law, people may be allowed to plant 6 plants, you can do it in your backyard. So,
It's really, it's really,
I have to go and cut 3
Yes.
from the perspective of the municipality.
Why is Max in my backyard?
If the state law is either just decriminalization or allowing recreational use,
cut 3 plants.
really, if it's allowing recreational use, it's no different than alcohol. Your ability to restrict would be through zoning, because you can't say it's illegal in Tenafly, because you can't say that.
Can't
So
usurp the
so really,
state.
it would be zoning issues, like where can you, where would it be best to allow a zone where, it could be sold?
well, so Bill, let me ask you a question. If the, part of the state law says residential can plant up to 6 plants on their property, would we be allowed to prevent that?
I'd
or-
say no.
No, I would,
But-
the only thing we could do, like you say, is
Control commercial.
commercial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, also to Max's point about, I'm willing to listen to anybody, but I'd rather listen, if it looks like New Jersey's gonna make this into law, then I'd want to listen sooner rather than later, because I'd rather Tenafly be ahead of the curve
I
than
agree.
behind on this.
Okay.
You probably already are.
All right, so that's for the good of the order. I put an item on old business. I know Max and Jeff are going back and forth on this meeting with the planner concerning a suggestion from Max that we change the zoning in a certain part of town to 1 acre zoning. And the area, it's not up on the hill where it's already 1 acre zoning. I did, Max, I'll finish and then you can speak, okay?
I'm not gonna say.
I did reach out to the planner because I was a bit concerned about this suggestion. He confirmed my my concerns about it. To change zoning is basically something you can't do unless there is a zoning trend which gives you impetus to do that. In addition, if you're going
What does that mean, a zoning trend?
Bill, can you?
If properties are changing, such as where, a lot of times you see it in, when it's a 2-family zone, houses either becoming two families or previous two families have been, renovated and now can change into one families. Houses are being demolished and lots are being consolidated and large buildings being, something like that, where the trend of a changing neighborhood or a zone, an area that's changing would justify being more restrictive in terms of making it larger.
So basically, this concept would probably not pass muster as far as legality is concerned, but the two concerns that I shared with him and he agreed on, one is that when you're taking an area that has smaller properties and turning it into a larger properties, 1 acre zoning, you're basically making every house, every property non-conforming. There's no such thing as grandfathering. So anybody wanted to enlarge their house, anybody that wanted to take a permit out, it would be immediately on that list that we saw earlier, denied, and they would have to go before either the zoning board or the planning board, making it a very onerous situation for people that otherwise might not even need a variance. You want to expand your house, you have a little bit of room for it, but now if you make it 1 acre zoning, the setbacks are that much larger, and you've got small properties. So that's number one. And number two is if you're taking smaller properties and making them into 1 acre properties, you're going to get the attention of COA, because what you're doing is you're making your town a little bit less inclusive, and that's the last thing we want to do. So for those reasons, along with the fact that the plan is probably illegal, my suggestion is not to have a meeting with the planner, because the planner, this meeting would cost us a minimum of $300, maybe a little bit more, because he gets paid for his time. We don't have that in the, but where would that money come from, Lucette, or Susan? If the council decided they wanted to hold a meeting and the meeting would cost us?
Other contractual items.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have a line.
So with that in mind, I'm suggesting to the council that we don't hold this meeting.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
You said no grandfathering, why is that?
Well, there's no such thing. You can grandfather, when you grandfather a house, it's grandfathered as long as there's no changes. The minute you go to make a change, and now the zoning is different, you have to abide by the new zoning laws.
You'd be a pre-existing non-conforming use.
Which is basically grandfather.
But the law is that you can't expand it. So if you wanted to demolish the house and rebuild it, you'd have a problem. If you wanted to put
Add
an
a
addition on,
second
you
floor
wouldn't
if
be
it's
able
a
to.
ranch.
Right. You're increasing the floor area ratio it's more than
So-
would be allowed to.
Before we make a decision,
And you have to notice.
Jeff and I, we're gonna get together.
People.
We're gonna take a look and let's us come back and talk to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Unless anybody has anything else, I'll entertain a motion to go into a public meeting, which I think we can do here since
Yes.
we have plenty of
Can
room.
we have 2 minutes?
Yeah, motion to close the work session? All in favor?
Well,
3 minutes.
Need to go by.
Wait, what channel is it?
In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the notice requirements have been satisfied. Meeting dates for the year are confirmed at the annual meeting, are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center and published in the record within the first 10 days of the new year. Copies of all revised or additional meeting notices are sent via fax to the record, Suburbanite Northern Valley Press, and are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center. Salute to the flag, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Barzalato?
Here.
Councilmember Bax?
Here.
Councilmember Clayton?
Here.
Councilmember Grossman?
Here.
Councilmember Park?
Here.
Mayor Rustin?
Here. I'll entertain a motion to approve the following sets of minutes. February 10th, budget meeting. February 13th, the budget meeting. February 20th, the work session, the regular meeting, the closed session. February 24th, the budget meeting. March 6th, the work session and the closed session. And March 13th, the special meeting. Motion, please.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Revisions to the agenda?
No.
Public comment. What I will do is I'm going to go around the room once, and if you raise your hand, I will call on you. Just state your name and your street for the record, please.
Okay, I'm here in two capacities. The first is
Name and
Christine
street,
Evron. Getting there. Christine Evron, President of the Chamber of Commerce, 39 Leroy Street. First, on the smoking ordinance, and I hate to be on the side of it, but I do represent the businesses. A lot of the clients do smoke. I'd suggest that you designate a non-smoking area outside, because a lot of the people that come to eat in our downtown cafes like to sit and smoke outside. All the notes. This is me as Christine Evron, as resident on the look of the downtown. You were stating that, for instance, the Apothecary was pretty, but it's one of the only examples of that kind of architecture in New Jersey. We have some really, truly special buildings, and all the research says that if you want to have a thriving downtown where people come down, stroll around, go into stores like Cookdeek, eat at the cafes, they want a charming, cohesive town. They don't want to look at a town that's some very modern buildings, some kind of cheap boxes. We really need to start looking consistently like a historic town. If you designate towns as, or buildings as historic, this helps contribute to that charming, cohesive look. And if in the future, in 50 years, when all these buildings look tired and decrepit and nobody's keeping them up, and a developer wants to come in and build a sleek, modern, whatever is modern in 50 years, I'm sure you can reverse the historic designation. The worry not to change the downtown if you designate some buildings as historic, I don't think really is that significant. And if you want to have a vibrant town that's not a bunch of professional offices and nail salons, you really have to invest some work in making a charming, cohesive town.
Thank you.
That's comments on something else.
Thank you. The only thing I want to add to what you just said, Christine, is I'm not sure, I'm not aware of a process to reverse a historic designation.
Oh, there, okay.
I'm just saying, I'm not aware of it, if there is such a thing.
Pass an ordinance.
There's an ordinance.
Well, historic designation is well beyond the local, it's state. Anybody care to speak?
Yeah.
Just state your name for the record, please.
Maddie Gard. Noah Rader. So, hello, my name is Noah Rader.
And I'm Maddie Gard.
And we are here today to discuss a problem that we feel needs to be addressed in our town, the lack of sidewalks. Walking to school is supposed to be an environmental friendly and great physical activity. But due to the lack of sidewalks, it is hazardous for students to be able to do this on a daily basis.
Currently, there are many students walking to school near the road with a fear of getting hit by a moving vehicle. This slows down traffic and makes walking very dangerous.
According to Tim Johnson, a reporter for the New Jersey Spotlight New Jersey has never met the federal health quality standards for the ground level of ozone, more commonly known as smog, which envelops part of the state during hot summer days. By installing sidewalks and promoting walking to school or any close activity from one's home, it will save our environment step by step. Many schools promote walking to school as Walk to School Wednesdays, which are fun ways for schools to get physical and conserve car fuel.
However, the lack of sidewalks is preventing us at Tenafly and many of our fellow classmates from being able to do this. Furthermore, it is extremely dangerous for runners. A 60-year-old jogger was trying to enjoy an early morning jog when he was hit along East Clinton Avenue. An investigation by the Tenafly Volunteer Ambulance Corps stated he was most likely near the curb of the road. We feel this is due to the lack of sidewalks where he could have been protected from vehicles. Due to these reasons, we have before stated it would be of great help if you, the mayor, and the council could help us students fix this problem that has been brought upon our towns. We suggest places such as street near the main roads. This is because during school hours, these streets are swarming with cars that are coming in and out of these streets, and it's extremely dangerous for kids to be walking on these roads. Furthermore, in parks such as the one Walnut Drive, it is a very kid-friendly area, but yet again, there are no sidewalks, making it dangerous for kids to access it.
We understand that applying sidewalks costs money, but thinking about the big picture of this issue is what's important. Sidewalks are all about safety to all ages and a better quality of life. This is something that will overall enhance the quality of this neighborhood and communities. Sidewalks also increase property value if in good shape. I also know that there are many concerns having to remove the snow on the sidewalk. However, there are many teens willing to make small cash shoveling sidewalks, and it does save lives. Thank you for your time, and I hope together we can make Tenafly a safer, healthier community for everyone.
I'd just like to bring you up to date.
That's so cute.
Nobody disputes the fact that sidewalks are a good part of the safety picture, and although they do cost money, I don't think money has ever been the reason why sidewalks have not been put in place. To give you a good example, we did a project up at Smith School and added sidewalks there, and believe me, it has made a tremendous difference. The opposition to the sidewalks by the property owners
With the exception of at least one property owner who did not object.
But now
I just want to know
but now you're complaining about it after it's done. But what was remarkable. I mean, I think it almost went beyond the issue of sidewalks need to be shoveled, the snow needs to be shoveled. It really, I think, left a bad taste in everybody's at this table's, because, we were trying to do something that was a safety issue. The completion of the project showed that it was a total success. It's really made not only walking to school better, but it makes for a safer drop-off and pickup time. There are places at all of the elementary schools that could use additional sidewalks. So we're aware of it, and it's something we'll be considering in the future. But when you come here and put pressure on the mayor and council to do the right thing, it's very helpful. So we thank you for that, and you'll probably be quoted in the future.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You guys are at the high school or the middle school? Sorry,
Middle school.
Middle school. Are there some areas around the middle school that you know of that need sidewalks? Do you need anything in particular to get there?
Not necessarily around the middle school, but for me, I live on Walnut Drive, which is right next to Stillman, and sometimes I do walk and I pick up my siblings, and when I come home and I try to bring them from the school, there's tons and tons of cars swarming my street and in my street trying to park to get into the car, and it's really dangerous. I try to get my siblings near the curb or things like that. There are cars everywhere.
Especially up East Clinton, even though a lot of people don't walk there, there's some bikers that try and bike up that really big hill. So even if you have a sidewalk on the side, they could bike there and it can reduce the risk of people getting injured.
Well, I hate to tell you this, but most bikers are not going to ride on the sidewalk. In fact, most joggers don't jog on the sidewalk if there's a sidewalk available. That's not to say what you're saying isn't true. East Clinton is a very difficult street to walk on.
Yeah,
I know because I walk on it occasionally. And there's a lot of streets that I think would be safer with sidewalks. But I tell you that the majority of the property owners, if you move to a house that doesn't have a sidewalk, you're more than likely not going to want a sidewalk there. So it's not an easy situation.
Just to let you guys know, East Clinton is mostly a county road, so you guys should make this presentation to our county as well. Because we don't have control, especially up near 9W, to put in sidewalks. It is a county road. And I'm with you. I know there was the terrible tragedy, early morning of the jogger. And
Well, that jogger unfortunately ran out behind a car, and the oncoming car never saw him. He was crossing the street. He wasn't jogging along the street. So in this particular case, I can't blame the lack of sidewalks, because he was crossing the street. Although maybe if there'd been a sidewalk on one side, he would have stayed on that side, I don't know.
But there is something to be said, because my kids tell me the same thing. Specifically when they're going to the middle school where you are, crossing the railroad, coming from county, crossing the railroad all the way to middle school over there. There should be some sort of a walk, because there's really, you are really, and lots of kids are going that way, and there are really no safe way to go over there. So that should be something that probably we should plan for in that area at the crossing of the railroad south.
Well, the other area is over by the Clinton Inn. That intersection is terrible for walking, biking, any of that, driving.
Okay, anybody else going to speak?
Just
No.
for like
A Board of Education.
We're coming next time to see.
Next time? Okay. We'll close public comment. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bartolotta.
Yes.
Councilmember Bash.
Yes?
Councilmember Dayton.
Yes.
Councilmember Grossman.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Okay, committee reports. I'm going to start with you, Jeff.
All right, so, let me just bring up my notes. The Transportation Committee met recently for the first time in apparently several years. And it was a very interesting and I think useful discussion because a lot of the discussion stemmed from the mayor bringing up that he's been contacted about problems involving certain bus companies, either not showing up on time or being inconsistent in showing up at all. And the committee is looking into different options that we would like to then bring out. So some of these options include maybe the possibility of running shuttles from Tenafly to certain key points, or communicating with certain properties up near 9W about parking as a possibility so people can access the bus up on 9W. So there's a lot of good discussion came from that I think will be coming to this body as we develop some of the ideas and promote more discussion.
I don't know if anybody noticed, but I believe it was yesterday, in yesterday's record, on the front page of the record, there was an article about bus service, Saddle River Tours, which has taken over a lot of the routes from NJ Transit, and the gentleman who owns Saddle River Tours, who I've had numerous discussions with. It was a very interesting discussion talk. Basically, they collaborated and confirmed a lot of the things we said at the meeting. And by the way, I have reached out to the Armenian Church, and they are interested in maybe doing renting us some spaces. But nothing is easy, okay? I'll give you a good example. If we were to enter into some sort of an agreement with the Armenian Church, first of all, it would cost us money, which we could conceivably recoup by selling permits for people to park up there. But it would also require probably creation of 2 bus shelters, one on each side of 9W, and a major crossing, safe crossing, probably with pedestrian buttons, because people make the right off of East Clinton onto 9W, and people make the right off of 9W onto East Clinton when the lights are red. So you would need pedestrians. But the good news is, because it's about commuting, a lot of grants probably would be available for that. So that's a long way off, but it's an interesting concept. Maybe get 20 cars off the road. Thank you, Jeff. Max, you have anything?
The other thing is that we're still on the Nature Center Subcommittee on Pfister's Pond. We are still waiting word from the borough engineer, and we're following up with them as to if they've heard anything from the state about scheduling hearing or what kind of an application we're going to be considered for Pfister's Pond.
If there seems to be an inordinate delay from the DEP, remind me, I'll give you the name of the contact person that we have. When I say we, is a woman who's dedicated to municipalities, and she, at least her predecessor, was a very strong advocate for municipal projects. And if there's an issue with getting answers from the DEP, I'd like to think that she'd go to bat for us.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Max, you have anything?
I have a lot. So the question, okay, I'll start with the Senior Citizens Committee that met, and we have a few things. There is going to be a town hall with the leader of District 37 on May 23rd. Loretta Weinberg, Valerie Happel, and Gordon Johnson are going to be participating, and it's going to be at 10 a.m. at the Senior Center. And right now they're working on the schedule and making sure that everybody's notified and trying to put together what activities are going to be there. The next thing that we have is that at the previous meeting I have reported that we are ready to hire a senior coordinator, but that's not really true. Right now, Lisette and Gloria Lane are going through interviewing other candidates too, to make sure that we have the best candidate for the job. There was a lunch at the JCC, and we had a guest speaker that works at the JCC. And the JCC has a program which is funded by the state that provides lunches, hot lunches for seniors. And it's really a donation-based. They get an envelope and they can put a penny in or $5, which is the suggested donation for lunch. But people can basically have over there a free lunch, plus they have all kind of other activities over there. A few people from the Senior Citizens Committee, we went over there to see it, and it's a very, very good program. So 2 days ago, we had a meeting with the Board of Trustees at the Senior Center, and I brought this up because would have been, if there is a demand, would be good for the people in town, specifically the ones that cannot afford, to be able to have a free lunch, and we can use our bus during the lunchtime. So the Board of Trustees decided to kind of figure out how much of interest would be in town to have that type of lunch, and have the bus then go over there to take the people, senior citizens, to the bus and to the JCC, and then come back over here. The JCC also can offer transportation, but we're gonna find out about how much of a pool this is gonna be. The next thing is the Senior Citizen Committee said that it's very difficult for the seniors to go and navigate the website to get to their activities. If it's possible to have a direct senior citizen activities on the first page, so they just can click over there. People that have lower skills than will be able just to go and click on that and have their activity published on the Tenafly side. So
Like a one-stop ride.
exactly. No, but that's that you have to understand that this is the activities of the senior citizen. They if they have computer skills, they are not as developed as other people. Peter and Dan, do you want me to report on the meeting that we had with the chief of police?
Yeah, but let me just piggyback on your Board of Trustees Senior Center. A couple of things that I think you might be interested in. They are expanding their trips. They have about 6 trips in the schedule coming up, including like an 8-day trip to Nashville and New Orleans. Most of these trips are run by outside companies. And many of them are partnered with other senior centers, like we usually partner a lot with Leonia. So there's going to be a trip to the New York Botanical Gardens, which is, I think, a regular one to Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, another one to the Whitney Museum in the High Line. So they're really picking up on these trips, and it's a great opportunity for seniors that might not have a way of getting to these places. I know they're doing a trip to Broadway to see the musical Beautiful, which is already, the trip is sold out. Also, the committee announced that they have a nominating committee because there's a turnover every year on the Board of Trustees because there's term limits there, and a couple of them are leaving because they've served 2 terms. So, if the members are invited, the members of the Senior Center are invited to join the committee. It happens to be an excellent committee. And last but not least, they made a suggestion for the bus, and that is once or twice a year for the bus to take them to motor vehicles. And I thought that was a good idea, although if you can drive, you could drive to the motor vehicles, but in any case...
You need an ID sometimes if you don't have a license.
Well, I would assume that most of them are renewing their license, not getting a license at that age.
Like my mother-in-law, she didn't drive, but she needed an ID.
Oh, right.
So motor vehicle issues an ID.
Okay. Oh, okay. So I think that's an excellent suggestion. Okay, Max, that's it for this.
Okay.
And by the way, thank you for putting that senior forum together with Loretta Weinberg, Gordon Johnson, Valerie Huddle. That should be a very, because a lot of the seniors want to talk about property taxes and want to talk about state issues.
Yeah, so we also had, Dan, Peter and I met with the police commissioner, through the, I'm sorry, with the chief chamberlain as part of the police commission, and there were a few things that were discussed. Probably the first and the most important thing is the request from the Board of Ed that they don't have enough money to pay for the existing officer, and they would like to have a younger officer basically put in so that they can keep the same amount of money spent, not to have to increase the money, because the existing officer is a senior one, and every year the money increased. The Chief Chamberlain basically said that he doesn't have a young officer right now that can be put on such a duty, because the young officers have to be trained, they have to understand the town, they have to understand their duty.
Max, I think we need to talk about the SRO situation in closed session.
Okay.
But not only if you're talking specifically
We are going to talk about
a
specifics.
person.
No,
As opposed to just generally.
We are talking about, there's people involved and also contract.
Oh, okay. Well, you could go into the contract provisions about us.
I think we should
with
do
the
that.
Board of Ed, we should
Fine.
wait on that.
Okay.
I do want to say, we're meeting on that.
I'm sorry?
We're meeting on that next Tuesday, so if you want to wait till after that meeting, so we know more.
See, we should
No,
talk
no. I think we need to go into closed session at the end of this, just for 5 minutes.
for 5 minutes. Okay, then fine.
All right.
Okay. The other one that was, the other thing that was discussed was that there are money in the budget to start putting lightning signs, the one, the flashing sign, and there are money in the budget to put 4 signs, which is 2 intersections. And we got the quotes, and they were exactly as we said, very inexpensive, about $1,500 per sign, and the DPW can install them, so it will be very efficient to have at least to start with 2 intersections, then we can decide whatever additional money we want to put in. I don't see any other things I have over here in my notes.
I have a couple other things I'll mention. Chief Chamberlain mentioned to us that the cars that were ordered as a result of, the budget in 2017 are still not here. One of them should be here within another week, but he just wanted to make a point that there is a very long time lapse between the time we authorize him to get cars and when he actually gets them.
2 are coming in a few weeks.
Yeah.
But one is really behind.
Okay, and one of the things we might want to talk about is that this, with our state representatives, this is a process, because the process could be improved. He also mentioned moving along the concept of lowering the speed limit on East Clinton Avenue. That's a county road, so that's part of the process. He mentioned an idea of doing a turn lane at the intersection of Jefferson and River Edge Road, because that traffic backs up past McKay School. If a car is going down Jefferson and wants to make a left onto River Edge Road, it ties up the whole lane of traffic. And he feels that a turning lane can be made there without any real expense, just simply eliminating a couple of parking spaces on the east side of Jefferson Avenue. And those are parking spaces that commuters normally use, so it is what it is. He also mentioned that Captain Trainer will be retiring on July 1st, which creates a need for a reshuffle. We'll be talking about that in future meetings. And he also mentioned that they were able to receive 5 used but functional computers from Paramus Police Department, and they're in cars now, and they really helps the process. They can check license plates without going through the dispatcher, so that's a very positive thing. You had another meeting, Max?
No, I don't have anything else. Thank you so much for...
Tony, you have anything? Laura?
I have 12 committees, of course I have. I'll start with the Chamber of Commerce. because Christine's here, and there is a request that we send in either a health inspector or a code inspector to the parking lot O, behind Shea Cheese and Pizza Nova. There have been rat infestation or issue sightings. I'd like someone to check it out and see what's actually
Where
happening
did you get that information?
from the Chamber of Commerce.
All right, so you have nothing,
I haven't personally seen
All right,
it.
so when you get a complaint like that, you want to get somebody to give it in writing, a property owner or a tenant,
Okay,
all right? The president of the Chamber of Commerce is well-intended, but she doesn't own or operate any of those businesses.
Ruby's already talked to those people.
Who?
Ruby has already, the health officer has already talked to the people.
Okay, well then it's already done.
there you go, that's an update. The joint use, we are meeting on Tuesday on the SRO. Zoning had 3 properties up before it, all approved. On 23 Old Smith Road, they wanted a front yard setback and a rear yard setback and a setback for a deck. On 230 Hickory Avenue, this was impervious coverage. They asked for a variance and they got it. And on 23 White Place, they wanted a front yard setback and they received it as well. Now, I just want to say on 230 Hickory Avenue, they are actually taking a property, wait, is it White or, maybe it's White, 23 White. No, it's
Tell me
White
what it
Place.
is and I may be able to answer the
Okay,
question.
one of them is actually changing the direction of the house. So at the front door, I'm just gonna go
I
back to
think
my
it's
note.
White Place.
I think it's White, I think you're right. I just didn't want to say the wrong one. White is going to change the direction of the home so that they can actually build a more logical home and entrance way. It's a very long, narrow piece of property, and instead of having the front door and then having almost a railroad type house where the room, you have to go from one room to the next, the architect was there, he testified, they would like to change the house so that you come in from the opposite direction and that you can actually go both ways now in a more logical setting.
It's a corner property.
It's a corner property, yes, thank you, zoning board. And so all of these were approved.
You notice the board is working a lot better this year, right?
They missed Jeff. I had sent
I
out that they missed
have
Jeff.
noticed that.
Planning board's going down, but the Board of Adjustment's going up.
On the Wellbeing Committee, a lot of new stuff is happening. Now that they have moved to electronic versions, and they still have books being picked up, but very few. We had 16 new residents move in over the past month. They are now looking to create a spring event, and they would like to actually partner with either the fire department, the ambulance department, or both, and do some sort of spring event that brings in the residents, so that way the new residents that move in January, February, March don't have to wait all the way until September to have an introduction to our community. They haven't exactly come up with what it is yet, but they're working on brainstorming. The second idea that was brought up was to try to pair new residents with smaller groups of residents in a rotating parks or buddy system. So that we say, come on down to Walnut Park and we'll bring in some existing residents there and some new residents will come and some members of the welcoming committee and have a sort of a meet and greet, give out maybe something like cookies or water, something pretty reasonable. It's not a lot of cost to the borough, but it is effort on part of the welcoming committee. So that idea is kind of getting bounced around. And it would kind of highlight the special things that we have here, all of our parks, our library, our senior center, so that, if a senior resident moves in, we say, come have a tour of the senior center and so
Well,
forth.
most of your residents are not seniors, new residents.
Right, well, if,
You don't have new seniors as a rule moving into town.
okay,
But
well,
but the younger families, that's great, to introduce them to some more stuff.
so the idea is that they're shifting, I guess, more from, paper introduction to try to make it more personal.
I think the most important thing is the connection.
That's
If they can connect with the people and get them onto the website or get them more, yeah, that's
Absolutely.
great.
And then finally, the rec board met. The rec board had one vote on an issue in which it was brought up that the co-sponsored sport boards should only be, the vote was whether the board members should only be Tenafly and Alpine residents, or should it be expanded to those in other communities that would like to come in and coach. It was, offered that a case-by-case basis could be made if someone was very interested. It was voted down.
Well, you
It was
may not
voted-
know, because this might have been the first time that vote took place when you're there.
I've
But
heard
they
it was.
voted that at least 2 other times. There's one member of the board that is has a personal issue with somebody, and that's why it keeps coming up. I think the context of the vote was volunteers are valuable. If you got a guy or a woman that moves out of town and still wants to be involved, we shouldn't do that at the expense of a resident, but these boards, as a rule, are looking for volunteers, not throwing them in.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're making an assumption that's not correct. There was numerous complaints about a particular person, and whether that's the same person or not, that is what stemmed the vote, and not any particular member.
Only one person voted
Well,
for it.
there were residents that showed up to the rec board meeting that had things to say, and the vote was taken in reaction to more of this than any one particular board member asking for this.
Okay.
The other thing that was requested, and Mayor, this is almost directed towards you, is they would like to see if we can restrict sleigh riding on the new Muni field.
Why would they, it's been a year since I was on the sleigh riding.
Okay, well, they said the mayor strongly says we want sleigh riding on our fields, which I said I would bring up at
Well,
I think, but Jamie and the board felt it will destroy our new turf in a faster depreciation with the sleighs.
well, this is really the purview of, I shouldn't say the board, but they should make a recommendation to the mayor and council, because if we don't remove that fence, but that field is 12 years old. There is no deterioration on that end of the field that can be blamed on sleigh riding. I was very leery about sleigh riding when we got the new turf.
They're talking about the new
But most of them are now, you can't buy a sled with metal runners anymore. Everything is plastic. And, I would suggest that we ask the manufacturer what their opinion is. But I would also suggest that we do an inspection of the field now after 12 years. If sleigh riding is detrimental to an artificial turf field, you should be able to see it on the field, and I don't see it.
I don't know if this is a different turf we're putting in, but that did come up in discussion. A few other things came up. There was a request, mostly by me, to have a little bit more of an oversight in Tenafly Little League and softball, because we are having trouble getting parents to step up to coach.
So what do you mean by oversight?
Well, I brought up that someone wanted to come in and kind of be K through 5, help run it, help coordinate it. This was the proposal brought. The person, I think you know him, Rob Stern, said, let me come and help out.
Well, he doesn't want to help out, he wants to be paid.
Well, we currently last year paid Ed Solinsky to do something similar. He came to softball, he ran clinics, I think it was 6 or 8.
Ed who?
Coach Ed Solinsky.
You mean Ed Barsick?
Is it Ed Barsick? I thought his last name
Ed Solinsky was the representative of the Board of Education.
Oh.
But Ed Barsick is an employee of the rec department.
Okay.
And he runs classes.
He's wonderful, and I absolutely love him, and I think the idea was that he is more for the younger children, and Rob was looking to do something similar with the older, and that way they could see in both Little League and softball a growth, but the
Keep in mind that
board
you're a
said no.
liaison and not a member of the board.
I'm a softball parent, so I did bring that up as well. But, it went to the board for a vote, and that was said no, so I did want to say that. And the last thing is there's a request from the board to see the budget on the rec. So I don't know, Susan, if they're allowed to see
Oh,
the
the board?
budget. The board wants to see the budget, and that's,
Everybody's gonna see the budget.
Anybody can see the budget.
Yeah.
It's a public record.
Yeah, it gets posted on our website.
that's what I said. I said it becomes public, but it hasn't been voted on.
And it's really a possibility that before the budget is even presented to Susan, Jamie has the ability to share it with the rec board if she cares to.
She has details on that.
And
She
as a
gives it to me.
in the past, the rec board has been privy to the budget for each particular program. I mean, some program, it's very simple. We got 20 signups at $20 a head. This is what the instructor costs us. But other programs like the softball program, the football program, the camps, there used to be discussions at the rec board table over how these budgets were set up. I don't know if it's...
There was a discussion a little bit here. They went to generally what was budgeted, and there was an issue, and I've already brought this up with Susan during our budget meeting, that the softball funds, there's a gap in time between when they want to use it. I told Jamie to reach out directly to you. So-
Well, the issue is that the softball helmets are put into capital, just like the football helmets. But now they should be getting money from registration for softball that they could use. Because it should
Well, they've been
self-fund
doing it.
itself,
So they've
so.
been doing it for 100 years.
But I told Jamie that, there may be other options, but
Okay. Well, and
But
then-
she needs to use the money that she's getting from registration towards that.
Well, I'm sorry, I have 2 more points I forgot. I'm just going through the list, checking notes. There's very few softball registrants, so maybe there's a gap. I don't know what's happening,
Then-
but
How are they gonna pay for the program if they're not getting registrations? So I'll talk to her,
okay.
yeah.
This is for, I guess Lizette, because it would be going to Jewel. Jamie Kennan has expressed an interest in helping out to pick equipment. She wants the rec board or the rec to have a say in the, whatever playground equipment comes in. She has requested that. I told her to speak directly to you. And then there's a request for joint use to be brought up. They are saying that different groups keep asking to use the McCandles room rather than the schools. And they would like to use the schools, but they're being told no. In particular, this is the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts have been told no. And so she wants me to bring this up at joint use. So they're currently in our borough property and they're not in the schools.
Well,
Oh, yeah, by the way, we shouldn't be bringing up Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. It's got nothing to do with Borough Tenafly.
It's just the
Using
use of
schools,
facility.
Absolutely not. There's not, no.
well,
Absolutely not.
if you
sorry.
see me at some point, I'll go over the use of the facilities and we can talk about it. I don't know that it's
So
joint
it
use.
was
or
brought up
not.
as an issue and I'm bringing it up now.
Okay, thank you.
That's everything.
What was you just said for that?
Dan, did I give you an
Jamie wants to
opportunity?
talk about the playground.
I think you talked.
No, you started.
Dan.
Softball funds.
Then
Do
your
you have
turn.
anything, Dan?
TVAC met yesterday. I was on, I couldn't stay for the whole thing, but there was apparently a communication issue again. So if you can talk with Chief about that, there was a car fire, a limo fire.
On Walnut Drive.
Yep, and TVAC was not called out. They just missed the call.
You know, wait, oh, stop, time out here, hold on. This is getting out of control here. The police department and the fire department work very well together, okay?
Correct.
If they need TVAC,
They will call.
they will call them. They're not just calling them for the sake of having TVAC come there, okay? Absolutely not.
I'm under the
No.
impression that there was no
There was no.
injuries,
I
nobody
assure
was
you
in
that the
danger.
Police chief and the fire chief are
For a working fire
so
zone.
proactive. But if
No,
that's
no,
not
yeah, I
working,
get that.
working house fire, different story. But for a working car fire, no,
Just as a protocol, that wasn't.
never.
Okay, gotcha. What did I write here?
That's it?
Environmental met. They, the green team met as well. They are still prepping for Earth Day, which is gonna be held in Demorest this year. They're the ones hosting the Northern Valley Earth Fair. And the date is April 21st. It's a Saturday.
That's gonna be where?
Demorest.
Demorest?
I'll have the address once I get that. The environmental committee is also received a grant application for the annual ANJAC $1,500 grant.
What is that?
Just for any project that boroughs are running. So as usual, the committee, both committees, Green Team and the Environmental Committee, looked into projects that qualify for the grant. We didn't have that many great ideas. None of our ideas would have qualified, but the Nature Center is going to apply. We're going to apply on their behalf to make improvements to their butterfly cage. And that application that grant, Peter Punzi just wrote the letter tonight, so just has to be signed and sent to ANJAC. And that's it. I voted to just now.
That's it?
Yep.
Oh, one thing I took away from the Nature Center dinner was they raised enough money to redo the main trail, which I don't know how many of you are familiar with. The main trail is really not a accessible place. I mean, you have to be a mountain climber to go up and down it. And they got an anonymous donation of $18,000 that would be a matching, and they actually raised another 18 at the dinner. So they have $36,000 to redo that trail. I'm assuming they're going to make it ADA accessible, but it's going to be easy to walk, much easier to walk up and down.
ADA accessible.
Well, you know, right now, there's branches, you couldn't take a wheelchair on that trail now.
Yeah, okay.
But they're looking to make it like a smooth gravel trail with a pitch so that water goes off it. It looks, I shouldn't say ADA accessible because I don't know that to be a fact, but from the look of the picture, I would be surprised if it wasn't. Let's go right now to the introduction of two ordinances.
Did anyone meet with the DPW? Tony, did you meet with them?
No.
Okay.
Anyone want to volunteer to introduce 18045?
The municipal, the cap?
Yeah.
Before we do that, can we discuss for a second the cap?
I have like 9 questions.
Yeah, how much we have so far in the cap, Susan?
Well, did you look at the budget? You all have the budget document?
Yeah, we have the budget, but it doesn't show, I didn't, you know, it came in the...
Okay, so if you turn to the page, let's see, 3C.
I'm sorry?
3C.
3A?
3C.
C.
This is what, our public budget? This is what-
Yes, that's it. Okay, so on the left side is your calculation, and it's not really how much, it's a bank, and it's to be used in the next, can be used in subsequent budgets.
Yeah.
We don't have a need to use our cap bank,
Yeah.
because the number that they look at is second from the bottom, or we would look at, is the 2018 budget within the cap, which is $21,754.
Wait, what page are you on?
I'm on 3C.
C, doesn't say the C. C is,
It's like kind of cut off on the bottom line.
No, you were right,
Bottom
you were
left.
right. She's 3C. I was on 3C1, sorry.
yeah. So, Susan, just to understand,
Sorry, I said you were right.
total 2018 budget within cap is 21 million.
Right, so if you want to know what that is, it's all of your operating expenses up to page 19, sheet
Okay.
19, and then anything after sheet 19 is excluded from this
So,
calculation.
but when we're gonna go and increase our cap, basically that's something that we're gonna have as a reserve, yes? In case we need it next year?
It's not really a reserve, it's,
What you're allowed to go over,
yeah, what,
worst case scenario.
right, you might have to use it in the future, but I don't see us ever using it unless there's something catastrophic that happened in our budget. Because we're 1.9 million below the cap.
Okay.
But are we increasing it this year, or are we
No.
putting more money into it?
It's just,
It's
you're not really
it's a
putting
legal
money
limit for you to go
into,
above the 2%
No,
cap.
Yeah.
I understand, but I'm saying, what are we doing with it this year?
we don't do
Nothing,
anything with it.
nothing.
It's just
It's a
remaining
ceiling,
steady.
it's a ceiling.
It's a ceiling that you look at page,
It's not a monetary, it's what you, worst
the
case scenario, you had
concept
to
is
go
hard
to,
to-
you can go to
I
that.
understand that it's the max budget that you can go in case you have an emergency.
right, if that number was over like 20, let's see, 23 million, let's say, then you'd have to go into your cap
2016's
bank.
Okay.
But that would mean a $2 million increase to your budget.
No, is there something like we save the cap every year
You
or?
don't save
It's not
it,
money.
No.
it's just a
okay.
calculation.
I
It's
appreciate
not money, it's the
Okay.
ceiling.
Okay.
It's the worst case scenario. If
Jeff, you
increase our
want to
budget by
introduce
4%, That's the amount we can go to.
First ordinance?
I move to introduce and pass on first reading ordinances 18-04 and 18-05 and set the hearing for April 3rd, 2018, it should be, not 17, at 8 PM or soon thereafter in the Tenafly Municipal Center.
A second, please.
Second.
Lisette?
Ordinance number 18-04, an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank pursuant to NJSA 48:4-45.14. Ordinance number 18-05, an ordinance amending chapter 2, section 2-47.20 of the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Tenafly, establishing health and eligibility requirements for members of the Junior Firefighters Auxiliary Program. Councilmember Barzalato?
Yes.
Councilmember Bash?
Yes.
Councilmember Dayton?
Yes.
Councilmember Grossman?
Yes.
Councilmember Park?
Yes.
Lauren, you want to read the next one?
I move to adopt resolution 18-123, which introduces, no, let's introduce. the 2018 municipal budget and set the hearing for April 17th, 2018 at 8 p.m. or as soon thereafter in the council chambers of the Tenafly Municipal Center for the hearing on the adoption of the 2018 municipal budget.
A second, please.
Second.
Call the roll.
Councilmember Barzalato?
Yes.
Councilmember Bash?
Yes.
Councilmember Dean?
Yes.
Councilmember Grossman?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
The only remarks I have tonight are to once again congratulate the 6 members of the 5 members of the council that are here. I think you did an excellent job in working with our professionals to create the budget. And, I can only hope that the process continues to go smoothly next year. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
what you've done. I'll entertain a motion.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Thank you. Have a good evening, safe
We're
trip.
gonna have a